14 in Tennessee tonight. No Tannehill, no Derrick Henry. No real stakes for Tennessee since they need to beat Jacksonville next week.
Yeah, right.
Well, so this should be a cakewalk for the Cowboys. Nick?
Yeah.
A win is not enough in your book.
No, they got to crush the Titans.
You like gaudy stats.
No, not always. It depends on the circumstance. But tonight, I need the Cowboys to annihilate this team.
What's an annihilation look like?
Cover the 14. To cover the 14, beat them by 2+ scores to me, and have the game never be in doubt. The real thing is, if you're watching the game, does it feel like the Cowboys have firm control the entire time? Listen, Josh Dobbs is starting for the Tennessee Titans. I met Josh Dobbs, a little rookie event right when he was drafted. Walked over, handed me his business card, said, Josh Dobbs, quarterback. That's a true story. I like him a lot. He has not been good, though. He has 17 career attempts, and those 17 attempts are gone for 45 career yards. He was drafted 4 years ago. So he's starting today. And Dallas, if there was ever a spot where you can get your defense rolling back the way it was 6 weeks ago, where Micah Parsons can get back, he's not going to win Defensive Player of the Year, Nicky Bosa is going to win it, but he can get back at least statistically on par with Nicky Bosa. This is that game, and where Dak can play a clean game. This is that game. Everybody who has any nick, cut, or bruise for Tennessee is going to sit because their season does come down to week 18. Dallas, on the other hand, is in a weird spot because if they win tonight, there is odd pressure on Philadelphia to wrap up the division, wrap up the 1 seed by winning this weekend against New Orleans. Because Philly's going to know that Dallas has won, assuming Dallas takes care of business, and they're not going to want it to come down to week 18 when they have been looking like a lock 1 seed for the last 2 months. So this is a spot where I think Dallas should dominate, and if they win by 3, if they do what my Chiefs did, and this team, it keeps it close, takes them to overtime, that to me would be wildly disappointing for the Cowboys, given the health and the status of the Titans.
So they got to put them away early, period. Play a clean game if you're Dak Prescott on offense. I don't want to see any turnovers. Let's continue doing what we've been doing offensively, which is throwing the ball around, scoring touchdowns. Defensively, I agree with everything you said. But for me, this game is important for Dallas for a couple reasons, and none greater than you make a statement early and you get your guys out of the game, period. You get your guys out of the game. You do not allow this to be a contest after halftime, because that's where anytime you play a team who's kind of has nothing to play for.
Yeah, I'm scared.
Those are the most dangerous teams. Not so much because they can beat you, but because injuries tend to happen. They're going to be playing a lot of guys who don't normally play. They're trying to remain in the National Football League. They're going to be going 110 miles an hour. Like, you don't want your starters, who you know you're going to be going into the postseason with, on the field with that. It's like this has a feeling of a preseason game when you got one team that's playing no one and you got another team that's playing some of their starters. And you never know how it's going to go because you got one team that's playing at a different pace and they're not as – it just looks different and feels different. Put them away early. Get this game over with. Get your guys out.
Let me show you the Titans defense during their 5-game losing streak. The rushing defense, actually pretty good. Passing, not so good. So Dak should be able to air it out. But, Greg, what if, let's say Cowboys get the ball 4 and out. And then Tennessee does a little something. Cowboys get the ball back, 4 and out again. Do people start to get nervous? Like, uh-oh, Nick Wright said we need to annihilate them. All of a sudden, we can't do anything. Does that sort of add an aspect to it, that they start to feel pressure and all of a sudden the game plan falls apart?
Well, they got to win the game because they still – Nick made a point about the Eagles. Mm-hmm. You apply pressure to the Eagles going to playing the New Orleans Saints this week and making sure that they get that game. Because if they wait, then now the Giants can make it very difficult for the Eagles and give the Cowboys a chance. You don't play with this Tennessee Titans team Like, I'm not concerned about them losing this game whatsoever.
But
to cover the spread, get your guys out.
I think Greg's point's a great point, which is you want your guys to be able to have to play as few snaps as possible. Because he's also 100% correct. And you see this, by the way, across all sports. Guys that are fringe players,
oh man,
they play with more reckless abandon, if you will. And that's how guys get ankles rolled into and how things like that. So I totally, and this is basically going to be the Titans JV team. What, Wilds? What?
Well, when Mac Jones does it, he's a dirty player.
Okay.
Other guys are just trying their hardest. Okay, I see how it is. That's fine. I'm a big favorite.
Mac Jones.
I do.
He hates it.
I'll push you out of your seat.
Give it a shot. I'm one of those fringe players. I play with reckless abandon. Chiefs favored by 13.5. Interim coach Jerry Rossberg's first game.
That's all right.
Here's Russ.
Obviously, devastated by Coach Hackett because I think he's an amazing man, amazing teacher, amazing father. Just watching him with his kids and what he's been able to do and how he's taught the game for us. This season has been a season that we never thought it was going to happen the way it did. The reality is that, I wish I could have played better for him too. Wish I could have played at the standard and the level that I've played. I've always played at and know how to play at.
Okay. Now, a little peek behind the curtain, everybody. When this coaching change happened earlier in the week, you were a little bit nervous.
Nervous is not the right word.
Greg, was he not nervous?
Yeah,
nervous is not the right word. I didn't like the Broncos had quit. The Rams scored 51 on them. And the Broncos defense, which had been good. Now, granted, they're up against the quite frisky Baker Mayfield, but they had quit.
Yeah.
And then they fired their coach, and at times that gives teams a temporary jolt of energy.
And you said you wish they kept Hackett.
Yes.
You didn't want to go up against.
Well, that is
Coach
correct,
Terry.
because I would have rather played the Broncos that had quit and were done than a bit of a wild card Broncos. But does that make me nervous? Patrick Mahomes started his career by beating the Denver Broncos, and he has never stopped beating the Denver Broncos. He's 10-0 against them. The Chiefs haven't lost to the Broncos since Peyton was the quarterback.
They're not good. You guys are good.
Well, then
what's
the question?
Don't protest too much.
No.
Greg, should you be a little bit nervous?
Yeah, Nick, there's some nervousness. You mentioned it yesterday or the day before, whatever day it was. You mentioned it. So you already put your cards out there. And the reason why is because of what you just said. Remember there was a team just this year hired this guy who was doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And Jeff Saturday in the Indianapolis Colts, and everybody's like, oh, he's not going to beat the Raiders. This is a joke. What'd they go out there and do?
They beat the Raiders.
How many games have they won?
I can't believe
that was his first
the
game.
example you're using.
That was the first.
Better
and
example.
Then you have Steve Wilkes right now, who's in Carolina, who has his team, in my opinion, that's gonna knock the Bucs' chances out.
Right,
and then you have a guy in Russell Wilson who just stood up for the first time and said, I just haven't been good. I wish I could have played better. Well, you know who gets all the focus and attention now? Russell Wilson.
Okay.
You know when he played his best game, Wilds? Against the Chiefs a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true. He had 3 touchdowns.
Well, you know what? I am going to help your guys' point only because it's going to bring pain to Greg Jennings.
Okay.
Another example of a terrible team that fired its coach, playing a great team in a game that everyone thought was unlosable, was when Greg Jennings had a chance for football immortality. What were you guys, 13-0? Were you 14-0 against the sad sack Kansas City Chiefs?
Why would you go that far back?
Fired Todd Haley and right before the game and installed Romeo Crennel. And the Green Bay Packers came to Arrowhead and we kicked your ass, even though we only won 2 games all year. You guys were 15-1. Your one loss was to us. So yes, I'm well aware that bad teams sometimes fire their coach and get a surge of adrenaline. I watched them take perfection away from Greg Jennings, pierce the invincibility of the Greg probably have 2 Super Bowl rings if it wasn't for that Romeo Crennel Chiefs team. It pierced their invincibility for the season. But that's not going to happen to this Chiefs team. I'm not worried about the Broncos. The Broncos can't beat the Chiefs. It is an impossibility. They have not beaten the Chiefs in 7 years. 7 years, Wilds. It's not happening.
I don't believe in the Broncos, but Greg said there can be
just a little side note. I was watching that game from home. I did not play in that game.
If you played
and we lost,
you would have won.
Just saying.
Should have stood it up for your guys. They needed you.